It is a pleasure to bring you another episode of Dialogue with the Diaspora. I'm your host, Diane Haylock. We have a rich diaspora comprised of thousands of Belizeans who have migrated away, are born abroad to Belizean parents, or are descendants of Belizeans living abroad. This community of Belizeans form one of Belize's greatest assets. There is so much that binds us together, no matter where Belizeans are across the world. And that is why we are here for Dialogue with the Diaspora. Our guest tonight is an outstanding Belizean medical practitioner who has made Texas his home. Dr. Kalim Habet is a cardiovascular disease and critical care medical professional with over 31 years of experience in his field. He's the co-founder of the Heart Institute of Brownsville and is also a clinical adjunct professor in the Department of Medicine at the University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio. Dr. Habet is affiliated with Valley Baptist Medical Center and Valley Regional Medical Center. Thanks for making the time to dialogue with us this evening, Dr. Habet. It's really a pleasure to have you here with us.
It's a pleasure to be on your show. I've seen it multiple times, and I thank you all for hosting me tonight.
Doc, you know, it's clear that you've been living abroad for decades, but to get our dialogue started, we like to start from the beginning, where you started as a Belizean here in Belize. Tell us about yourself, your roots in Belize, and when you first migrated to the US.
Well, I was born in Belize City, and my parents, my father and my mother used to live in San Ignacio. My father, Kalim Habet, had a store, and because of the time back then, schools, etc., I actually grew up in Belize City because I went to St. Catherine's Elementary School. I grew up there at 33 New Road, right next to a store that you will probably remember called a Little Store. And that was my old stomping ground in New Road. I went to St. Catherine's Elementary, graduated from there. I was fortunate that I was given a scholarship to St. John's College based on my grades and my exams that I passed, and continued at St. John's College, where I formed my high school years and enjoyed it thoroughly. And upon completion at St. John's, back in the 1980s, early 80s, there was no university in Belize, and most people would have to venture abroad to study. I was offered a scholarship to sixth form, but my deal was to be a physician. And at that time, I immigrated to the United States and went actually for a year at Loyola University in New Orleans. And then at the time, I was really not an American citizen. It was going to be very difficult to get into medical school back in the early 80s. So I decided to pursue my career in San Jose, Costa Rica, where quite a few Belizeans had been studying because they had moved from Guatemala to Costa Rica. That began my career in medicine back in I would say I finished in Costa Rica in 1987. Bear in mind that I've always been going back to Belize. I go back about at least 2-3 times a year. And I love Belize dearly. So upon finishing my studies and being a general practitioner with an MD degree, I did go back to Belize. I was young, I was 24 years old, and I was handed a medical degree without any specialty. Upon arriving to Belize at that time, there were really no specialty residence or anything to pursue at the time when I was back there in 1987, 88, I think it was. So I decided to pursue a residency in the United States of America, which is very difficult because you have to do quite a few days of exams, in total 5 days of examinations, and you have to pass them and then apply for a residency. So that's what brought me to the US to specialize, train with the intentions of going back to practice in Belize. I elected to do internal medicine, which is a 3-year residency. And I was fortunate to be given a residency at St. Francis Hospital in Evanston, near Chicago, an affiliate of Loyola University. Upon completion of that, my interest peaked in intensive care medicine or critical care medicine. So I was again fortunate to interview and be accepted to a prestigious fellowship in Chicago at Rush University Medical Center in critical care medicine. That was because of my hard work in internal medicine and my letters of recommendation, and I was elected an intern of the year. When I got into critical care medicine, I then started to do a lot of research in septic shock, and I did publish quite a number of articles and wrote some book chapters at that time. And my mentor, who was Dr. Joseph Perillo, was actually a cardiologist who was the chief of cardiology as well as critical care, and encouraged me to pursue cardiovascular medicine and interventional cardiology, which was another 3 years. So in summary, 8 years graduate training.
So it seems, Doc, that you have always wanted to be a doctor.
Yes, that's something that came from I was a little kid when they gave me my doctor's kit when I was about 5 years old.
And you were experimenting on your sister's dolls and things?
Well, to a certain extent, yes. And also, I had my first cousin, who was a prominent physician in Belize, Dr. Jose Antonio Lopez, was like a mentor to me. He was actually director of health services in Belize for quite some time. And he would take me on runs to the hospital when I was 16, 17, 18. I was exposed at a young age, because I was the first one in my family, you could say, that went to university.
So where are you now, Doc?
Presently, after finishing Chicago, I was offered a job where I trained. I wanted to move back to Belize, but at the time, you're talking 1996, 97, interventional cardiology was not quite available or accessible in Belize at that time, so my training would have been too much at that time for there. The procedures that I do and the equipment that was needed was not available. So I was looking for a place that was warm because I'm used to the warm of Belize. I looked at Florida, I looked at New Orleans, I looked at Texas, and I was fortunate to find Brownsville, Texas, which is on the border with Mexico. And it's near South Padre Island, which is about 20 minutes away, which is, to be honest with you, very similar to Belize. It has a very mixed culture with Hispanic influence. And, it was a challenge. It was a challenge because it was an underserved area with a population roughly at the time of about 200,000 people, with a draw population of about 350,000 people. And I was recruited heavily to start the cardiovascular program here. So the hospital afforded all the equipment necessary. And with one of my partners, that is still my partner today, who is from Brownsville, Texas, we initiated the interventional cardiology as well as the cardiovascular program here. And it's a thriving, successful program to date.
Excellent. And in the process then of being in Brownsville, I understand that you co-founded the Heart Institute of Brownsville. Tell us a bit more about that. That sounds quite fascinating.
Well, it's a fascinating thing because, we started from scratch, a small little clinic, mom and pop shop, to a 25,000 square feet facility, which is totally outpatient, that does everything that you can do except major surgeries. In other words, we do ultrasounds, we do x-rays, CAT scans, all kinds of minimal procedures, and we treat patients in the outpatient setting. If we need to do something at the hospital, then we go to the hospital. But the Heart Center Brownsville is an all-inclusive. It has a lab. It has everything that you can turn around labs within 10, 15 minutes. We can do everything that's necessary from a cardiac standpoint except doing major surgery.
Okay, so maybe you could talk a bit more about some of the things that the Heart Institute is perhaps best known for.
Well, we are the premier heart clinic in South Texas, south of San Antonio, and we provide comprehensive care in prevention as well as in intervention in any cardiovascular disease. We also provide critical care if necessary, and we also have primary care, meaning that we have some doctors that are not cardiologists like us, that work also alongside us, so we can provide a comprehensive care. You can come to us for simple things such as hypertension, complex things such as heart disease, valvular heart disease, or a simple cold and a flu, or COVID. We were actually instrumental in COVID-19 and continue to be in the forefront of taking care of patients in the outpatient settings for COVID.
So how would you say then the pandemic in itself affected your business, whether positively or negatively? Or both?
Yeah, the pandemic has been one of the greatest learning experiences in my career. I lived through back in the 80s. I lived through the HIV crisis when it was unknown. I lived through the Ebola, the other SARS viruses, but this really caught everyone by surprise. I think that the doctors and nurses responded extremely well, considering the fact that we were not only in Belize, but also here in the United States, not prepared at all, meaning that everything is made in China, all the gloves, all the gowns, the protective gear, and we had a shortage, just like everybody else in the world. And it was quite an experience to deal with that, to see patients dying, and not have the equipment sometimes, etc. So do not think it's only in other countries. We have experienced a great deal of problems in dealing with the pandemic. The best thing that people can do, and I hate to say it on your show, but I have to,
Please
is to
do.
vaccinate.
Yes.
You have to vaccinate. There's a lot of myth about vaccines and everything about where the vaccines came from. However, vaccines save people. The fast track of the vaccine was not the science behind the vaccine. The science of that vaccine has been around for 20 to 30 years. What they did was fast track the bureaucracy to approve the vaccines. I myself have been triple vaccinated with my booster. I've been exposed severely, and thank God I'm here. And if it wasn't for the vaccine, it would have been extremely difficult. And I do think I have to put that punchline in there for the people of Belize.
But the narrative has been suggesting that perhaps it is a novelty. The vaccine is a novelty in itself, and maybe it is that narrative that has caused a lot of the anti-vaxxers to take the position. Right. So for me, it's interesting that you're saying this, that really, the science of it has been around for quite some time. And it is only then with the virus, coming on stream that, as you said, they had to fast track the way to get it approved and then to be able to utilize it all over the world.
Absolutely. Belize has been extremely fortunate to have more vaccines than population. That's one of the few countries in the world, like us in the United States, that have more vaccines than people willing to take it. And I think that is wonderful.
Yeah.
Not the fact that they're willing not to take it, the fact that they have vaccines available.
We do have the vaccines. I myself, I've been able to do the vaccines and the booster shot, as well, and it was very easy, Exactly. So we are fortunate, especially when you think of the African continent, for instance,
Absolutely.
It just seems like a huge crime, what's going on in that part of the world. So perhaps we need to consider ourselves extremely blessed and take advantage of the opportunities that we do have.
Absolutely. I agree 100% with what you're saying. I keep in touch with quite a few doctors in Belize. As a matter of fact, I do have quite a few. They're very good friends of mine that I do co-manage patients with. I do see quite a bit of Belizeans that come see me here. And I'm in touch with Belize because my son moved to Belize and lives in Belize now, and my grandkids are in Belize.
What does
And
your son do? Is he also in the medical field or
no,
no?
he manages a company at the airport called Air Dispatch that
Oh, okay.
that's been there doing the ground handling in Belize.
Oh, good. All right. Yeah. Yeah, so you do have to stay in touch.
I do. I actually go to Belize quite often, and I'm planning to actually start constructing my home in Belize because I'm going to have a permanent home there for sure.
Excellent, excellent. We love to hear that because we love when our people come back home. We certainly understand people's reasons for living abroad, but we think it's really important when our Belizeans come home, especially those with the talent, the professional knowledge and expertise that we so desperately still
Absolutely.
need very much in our Belize. So it's good to hear you say that. I think you may have touched on it just a bit, but perhaps you could talk to it more directly in terms of your professional connections, with Belize itself, the medical profession in Belize.
Yes, I've actually done talks invited by Belize Medical Associates and Dr. Cuellar, who is a critical care specialist in Belize. He's a personal friend, and I've co-managed patients with him. I mean, we talk on the phone whenever we have a patient together. I've also worked with Dr. Hidalgo quite often, actually. And again, we talk on the phone quite often about patients, etc. Dr. Irvin Gabriel, I've worked with extensively also with co-managing patients, and they're also friends of mine. And I've actually volunteered at the Carl Huchner. At one time, I did a couple of clinics there, and I've done seen some patients. And this is all pro bono. I don't charge for my services when I'm in Belize. I've seen patients there with Dr. Irvin Gabriel also. I keep in touch with them. I'm actually licensed to practice in Belize. I did go and get my license because I plan to. I wouldn't say retire because that's not in my. But I am slowing down here, and I plan to do more in Belize because
Right.
my family is there, and as I said, I plan to probably do some degree of outpatient medicine in Belize in the next few years, hopefully.
What do you see as some of our needs in Belize in that your whole area of expertise?
That's an excellent question. I think one of the main things that I see that Belize has is very similar to what I see often is things, for example, such as hypertension, which is high blood pressure, is very, very rampant in Belize. Diabetes, again, and being overweight and being sedative. Belize, even though we consider a third world country, Belize has moved forward with all the diseases that we're now you would see in the United States of America, meaning because of, I don't want to say poor eating habits, but the quality of food. People are getting overweight. People are getting more hypertension, more undertreated hypertension, which leads to, worsening heart conditions as well as strokes, which is all preventable. This is all preventable if treated adequately. I think that in my field, cardiovascular, in a country such as Belize, prevention is always better than intervention because when you get to have to intervene, the cost is enormous. The cost to do a procedure in the heart is enormous. So you want to actually prevent from getting to that point. So how do we go about that? By educating people in regards to blood pressure issues, making sure they understand why you're treating them with medications, What about diet? What about exercise? How can you maintain your weight? How can you decrease your blood sugar? What foods to choose? That doesn't mean a strict diet, but I'm talking about doing it in a way so that it's a lifestyle modification that will impact your overall health and well-being.
But that seems to be the crux of the matter, Doc, that in fact, we know this more and more because our access to information, I mean, is
Right.
huge. So we know more of this, but somehow or the other, we seem not to be as willing to make the kinds of lifestyle changes that really will make our lives much, much better, help us to live longer. I mean, we are already living longer than, generations ago, but we might end up living longer, but not really well, not as well as we could be if we made some of these changes earlier in our lives. So how do we deal with that?
That's an excellent point that you make, and that's exactly what I tell patients. You're here working your life to retire. To retire to what? You want to retire healthy. You want to retire to be able to enjoy your quote unquote older years. And if you don't put in the time to do that when you're younger, you're going to be visiting doctors, if at all, or you'll be confined to a wheelchair at home, and you're not going to enjoy your years that you worked so hard to supposedly enjoy. So you have to be kind of blunt. You have to be blunt to patients and say, look, life, you only get one. So you need to take care of it. And yes, as a physician, I'm here to help you. But a lot of the time, it's in your hands for you to make sure that your body is well taken care of.
You've got to put in the time. One of the things I find interesting is that again, with the media hype about exercise, and thinking that you have to do all of these big strenuous, exercises all over the place, and yet there is this thing called walking. That if we did only that more with regularity, our lives would be so much better. But again, as I said, we think that we have to go to pay all these lots of money in gyms and buying all the expensive equipment that we often don't use very much, do we?
The good point. I mean, I'll quote you on many studies show that if you will just walk briskly 30 minutes a day for 5 days a week, that's better than taking medicine and I'm not saying to quit your medicines, for diabetes and hypertension, meaning that alone will prolong your life and improve your quality of life. So getting back to your point that you talked about, we're living longer. I want to live longer, yes, but I also want to live quality. And
Exactly.
that is the most important thing.
Yeah, I certainly can relate to that, right? I wondered if maybe you could talk to potential Belizeans who are considering medicine. Maybe some of them are already medical students. Do you have any words of advice, suggestions, ideas that you might want to put out there for them to give some serious consideration to, as they think not only in terms of their own professionality, but also their contribution, to medicine and health in Belize?
Yeah, I think that one of the most important things that people have to realize about studying medicine or any career in general is that you don't have to be a genius. You have to have persistence and determination. The medical profession is a long career. Minimum to get through medical school, depending where you study, would be if you get a bachelor's and you do medical school in the US, it's 8 years. Other countries, it can be 6 years total. But then you have to do a postgraduate. And again, it's the people that stay and stick to it. You're going to have, like I had most of my friends, I would go back for Christmas or Easter, and they already finished their degree, 4 years, they're working, they're making money, they're partying, and there I am, still, quote unquote, studying. So, you have to stay the course. Nothing good is easy, and nothing great will be achieved without hard work. You cannot expect to party the way a business major parties. Sometimes I used to, Monday would be my day off. Weekends I would study. I was in the hospital Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving, you name it. But in the end, hard work pays off. And my thing to anybody in Belize that's trying to do any degree like this is it's not where you start in life, it's where you end up that matters.
I wanted to go back to Brownsville. If I recall correctly, earlier you said that when you chose to do the Health Institute in Brownsville, it was basically because Brownsville in itself did not really have much
Correct.
happening in that area. Maybe you could talk to us a little bit more about that.
Okay, so the hospitals that were here at the time did not have a good cardiovascular program. There were two hospitals, and they brought me in, and they brought the equipment at that time to do the type of procedures I was trained to do is basically you're going through an artery, either through the right here in the wrist or through the groin area. And with a catheter under special cameras, you guide that catheter into the arteries of the heart, and you're actually able to see the arteries directly and actually put a balloon or put like what's called like a mesh or a stent and open the arteries. That's while the patient is awake, just sedated and under special cameras. That piece of equipment alone is about $1.5 million.
Oh.
That's the operating room. So they were willing to fund that and fund all that and all the other things, the intensive care that comes along with forming a cardiovascular program. Heart disease is the number one cause of death in America, by far exceeds all cancers combined. And the way it works here is that if you're having a heart attack and I'm on call, I have to be within 30 minutes of the hospital. I have to be in the hospital. And we have what's called a door to balloon time, meaning that from the time the patient hits the door of the hospital with the heart attack, I am operating the patient and I have that artery open within 60 minutes or less. I hold the record here in Brownsville for 15 minutes. But, that's the type of program that we have available here. Now, most places in the United States, bigger centers will have the similar things, such as Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, and Austin. But, it's very difficult to do a program like that if you don't have the infrastructure. And they, back in the early 1990s, here in Brownsville, they did not. But the hospital was willing to invest the money and start the program and see it through. So that's why we kind of started the program here. And now, obviously, it's a full-fledged program. Unfortunately, technology is expensive.
Yes.
And without good technology, it's very difficult to practice state-of-the-art medicine.
I can't help but thinking that the situation is that you experienced back then in Brownsville is very much what's happening here in Belize. I mean, we have so many huge challenges still in the area of tertiary care, right? How can we wave that magic wand and get Belize up to that point as you are in Brownsville?
I think that it would take a private and government partnership along with a group of physicians, probably some from the US, along with the ones in Belize, to partner together to get a facility. And I think it's a very doable thing. It's a very doable thing if you bring private investment along with the government and a partnership with some of the outstanding physicians that are in Belize together, and we bring some outside help. I think it's very doable. It's extremely doable in Belize. especially now with the increased tourism. And if you want Americans to retire and bring money to Belize, you need healthcare. And I think that that's what they're going to look at. And I think it's a very viable investment. It's a very viable project and should be looked at.
So while we're thinking about the tourism product as such, alongside that, we have to seriously think about upping our game where healthcare is concerned.
Well, you know, that's why Americans retire in Costa Rica, because the healthcare in Costa Rica is outstanding and the benefits are great. If you want, you know, Americans like healthcare. I mean, you know, and if you want to attract a reasonable retiree, because I think Belize has a lot to offer when it comes to retiring. I mean, that's why I'm going to be building my house there.
Right, right.
You know, it's beautiful. It has the beautiful waters, the jungle, everything. But we have to up the ante on healthcare because that will attract people with a higher amount of money to invest. Because you know, and I know that if you get really sick, it's the first 6 hours that count.
Yes.
You know, you can have the millions of dollars, but you cannot fly out within 6 hours. It would take, you know, but you have to stabilize within the first 6 hours. So we need to do a private and government, investment in funding so that we can get the healthcare that Americans are accustomed to.
No, I mean, we do have a retirement program that is an integral part of our tourism product right now.
Absolutely.
But I'm hearing you say very loud and clear, you know, that we do have to seriously invest then in having a healthcare system service that can cater to the needs of those people that we're trying to attract to come and live, you know, those twilight years in Belize.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that.
So maybe the people in the healthcare system, as well as I said before, the tourism section, need to really give some more thought to that. Put that on the table for serious consideration, and maybe it is something that you can lead the charge on, you know, as you contemplate, you know, spending more time back home.
I would be happy to do that and talk to the people that are interested in that. I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah. Well, Doc, unfortunately, our time is just about up. It's gone by so quickly, especially when we're having these kinds of very meaningful and enriching conversations. Unfortunately, I do have to bring our conversation to a close, but I hope it is not one that ends here with today's dialogue. And I thank you for having joined us this evening for this conversation. But before we go, is there any final word that you may want to leave with our audience?
Yes, well, first of all, thank you so much for hosting me. You've been a graceful host, and it was a pleasure being here. I think that for the youth of Belize, people pursuing a career, dream, work hard. It pays off. It takes time. Nothing great will be easy, and everybody wants the easy road. But you have to build a good foundation for your building to last. And that's extremely important. And I think that that's how you have to go about thinking about things. But it's possible. You know, if you had asked me 35 years ago that I would be doing what I'm doing and I would get where I'm at, I would not have dreamt, if I hadn't dreamed it, it wouldn't be possible. Mm-hmm. So never give up. Thank you.
Dr. Habet, you are an inspiring story. We're very proud of you and all that you have accomplished. You know, Belizeans like yourself are breaking down these barriers and accomplishing great things in all corners of the world, and never forgetting your Belizean roots and identity. Keep up the great work, Doc, and thanks again for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Viewers, we will take a break now, but we'll be right back. On that note, we will have to call it a wrap. Viewers, thank you for joining us tonight for Dialogue with the Diaspora. As expected, we had a dynamic and enriching conversation with Dr. Habet, a guest with expansive experience and a wealth of knowledge that we can benefit from. Our time is up for tonight, but we will be back again next Thursday at 7 p.m. right here on CBTV and on Facebook on Colorblind's page. Good night and take good care.